According to the Brookings Institution's analysis of carbon tax timing, high fossil fuel prices are the worst time to impose a carbon tax, but are the best time to build the underlying market architecture. And that infrastructure is rapidly being built and deployed by the biggest multinational corporations, governments and states, and the United Nations, especially in the past few months. Announced at Davos in January 2026, the carbon market platform EcoGuard automates the full carbon credit lifecycle. The carbon market is expected to reach $5 trillion by 2035. This infrastructure is designed to be invisible and ubiquitous. The goal is for every transaction, settlement, and data point to be managed behind the scenes so that the user is not aware of it. Also at Davos last January, Palantir CEO Alex Karp said that AI will destroy humanity's jobs and described a future in which high school students train for factory jobs, no one goes to college or immigrates, and black box software run by major government contractors determines whether society is being run properly. For the more compliant, the so-called 15-minute city, smart city, and freedom city models are being built to incorporate digital ID, carbon tracking, and population monitoring. Where you live, how far you travel, and what your carbon footprint is are already being tracked in multiple countries and several U.S. cities. For the non-compliant, the prison business is booming. Federal and state governments have announced over $2 billion in new prison construction in the past year alone, and the private sector dwarfs that. ICE's detention budget quadrupled when the One Big Beautiful Bill was signed into law in July 2025, adding nearly $11.25 billion to their coffers every year through 2029. An ICE director said he wanted a detention center that runs like Prime, but for human beings. And in order to keep the compliant managed and the non-compliant contained, we have Palantir, which received a no-bid contract from the USDA to track federal employees' return to office compliance with real-time analysis and continuous compliance monitoring. The contract also includes the One Farmer, One File initiative, which will give Palantir a unified database of the land holdings, conservation practices, insurance claims, and financial data of every farmer who interacts with the USDA. This is the same Palantir that is proudly assisting the United States and Israel in targeting operations against civilians across the Middle East. Palantir CEO Alex Karp published The Technological Republic in February 2025. It became an instant New York Times #1 bestseller and has been described as the AI manifesto inspiring Keir Starmer's government by the Times of London. Karp's central argument is that the state must merge its power with big tech, as it did during the Manhattan Project, to save Western civilization. The original 1930s technocracy movement, of which Elon Musk's grandfather was a member, declared that technocracy stands ready with a plan to salvage American civilization if and when democracy can no longer cope with the inherent disruptive forces. Palantir is currently deployed by the Department of Homeland Security, Health and Human Services, the FDA, the CDC, and the NIH, and is in discussions with the IRS and the Social Security Administration. The Bank for International Settlements has been quietly publishing frameworks for CBDC interoperability that would allow all national digital currencies to communicate with each other under a unified settlement layer. Sam Altman's WorldCoin project is building a worldwide biometric identity system with the stated goal of distinguishing humans from AI agents at scale. It already operates in dozens of countries. The new system is falling together in pieces: a digital ID to fight fraud, a stablecoin for faster payments, carbon tracking for transparency, and AI for government efficiency. Our driver's license becomes our digital wallets, and our level of compliance can determine how much access we have to them. There appears to be very little pushback, and soon it may seem to be the only option available to avoid total collapse.
8 brilliant minds, each one inching closer to unlocking zero-point energy, plasma fusion that could render fossil fuels obsolete, or the anti-gravity secrets allegedly reverse-engineered from crashed non-human craft. have met mysterious ends or vanished without a trace, their deaths and disappearances clustering in recent months amid rising whispers of massive revelations.
I've been 100% serious. I've been briefed by just about every alphabet agency there is. And I'll just tell you this, if they would release the things that I've seen, you would stay up, you'd be up at night worrying about or thinking about this stuff. This country would have come unglued, I think, if they would have heard all that I heard. They would demand answers. And we need to. But, you know, it's never going to get, unfortunately, it just keeps getting covered up. And the people that know are dying or disappearing, as the case may be.
Wow.
And for the record, I'm not suicidal, and I don't take risks.
This is why Congress is working hard for whistleblower protections, because we want people to feel safe, to come out and have a conversation. And right now they don't feel overly safe. They've seen some of the tactics and techniques that were applied to try to keep people quiet in the past. Let me say this in general terms. People say, oh, well, the government would never kill anybody to protect a secret. Try going to Area 51 and look at the signs on that chain link fence where it says lethal force authorized. You cross that fence and they can kill you dead. Okay? So the government can, under certain extreme cases, under certain extreme situations and conditions, they can do whatever they need to do to protect national security, and they will.
But I was standing behind an alien in a spacecraft, just a small one. Could I ask you a question? And he said, okay. And I said, how do you get from here to Alpha Centauri? We can't do that. The only thing that we think about is I have to go really fast for a really long time. Can you use what information I have in my head and try to explain it to me? And he said, well, do you know what a Rubik's Cube is? And I said, oh yeah, my son can do them in 2 minutes. He says, okay, so imagine a Rubik's Cube, but not necessarily just the 6 sides. Just imagine the concept of a Rubik's Cube. And I said, okay. Now imagine on each one of the tiles on the Rubik's Cube has a chart of the elements. And he says, so what you do to get to Alpha Centauri is you just twist the cube. And I said, what do you mean? He said, well, I told you wouldn't understand. And he said, when the periodic table occurs in a different place, you're at that place. And that's just a very crude explanation. But you have to stop thinking about go that way for a long time, very fast.
Describe the very first time you were teleported.
It was scary in a way. I mean, you don't really know, okay, is this evil? Is this good? What is this? What do I do with this? How do I deal with it? I was on the phone. Oh my God, what's happening? And I was landed. And landed about 40 miles away in a ditch outside of a Baptist church in a little tiny town just where you cross over the border. And it was an incredibly frightening moment.
If you believe we have crashed craft, stated earlier, do we have the bodies of the pilots who piloted this craft?
As I've stated publicly already in my News Nation interview, biologics came with some of these recoveries, yeah.
Were they, I guess, human or non-human biologics?
Non-human, and that was the assessment of people with direct knowledge on the program I talked to that are currently still on the program.
So what Grush has told me, this is what blew my mind, and what he said that happened with Trump. He said that the Nordic people or the Nordic aliens are like a few hundred years more advanced than we are. But the Nordic people somewhat resemble humans, and they have been experimenting with crossbreeding with humans. And he says some of them that there are aliens that are crossbreeds living in the world.
I mean, I had someone come and brief me who was in a military uniform, worked for the United States Army, that was briefing me on the locations of hybrid breeding programs where captured aliens were breeding with humans to create some hybrid race that could engage in intergalactic communication. An actual uniformed member of the United States Army briefed me on that.
The fallen include MIT plasma physicist Nuno Loureiro, gunned down while on the cusp of limitless clean fusion power. Caltech astrophysicist Carl Grillmer, shot dead on his front porch after work, hinting at exoplanet life detection that overlapped with UAP sensor tech. Novartis chemical biologist Jason Thomas, found dead near a lake with DoD contracts. Retired Air Force Major General William Neal McCasland, a Podesta emailed UFO insider with knowledge of crash retrievals and directed energy systems, who vanished on a New Mexico hike.
My name is Susan Wilkerson. My husband is missing.
Okay.
And it's been about 3 hours, and I have some indication that he must have planned not to be found. He's left his phone. He changed his clothes into I don't know what. I think he's on foot. All of our cars and bicycles are in the garage.
General McCasland's disappearance, what do you make of it?
Well, it's suspect, of course. I know a lot of folks are pointing at the UFO things because him being at Wright-Patterson over some top secret stuff is involved in some of the nuclear stuff, too. I know his wife said he didn't have anything to do with any UFO research, but generally those folks don't talk about it when they do that. They're at a pretty high level of security.
Melissa Casillas, who was believed to have security clearance for sensitive information at Los Alamos, vanished without a trace. Monica Reza and another unnamed associate who disappeared under eerily similar circumstances. NASA scientist Frank Maywald. The cause of death has never been made public, and officials confirmed that an autopsy was never performed. Maywald had been a prominent researcher at the space agency's Jet Propulsion Laboratory since 1999 and worked on multiple projects tied to advanced satellite technology that could scan Earth and other planets. And Anthony Chavez, a former employee at Los Alamos, until his retirement in 2017, vanished without a trace on May 4th, 2025, just 7 weeks before a key assistant at the same lab disappeared, bringing the total number of unexplained incidents to at least 8 since July 2024. As Congressman Tim Burchett and independent voices raise alarms over this body count, merely ask yourself, who profits from keeping humanity chained to oil barons and petroleum pipelines while the stars beckon with free energy from the vacuum itself? The pattern is too precise, the timing is too convenient, and the stakes, the deep state doesn't just hide the truth, it makes it disappear.